Hi, Kim. It's really great to have you on the show because obviously last time I was a guest on your show. So it's nice to be able to have you on mine now as well. So how are you doing?
I'm good. Hey, Rosie. Thank you so much for having me on. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm trying to think when we last spoke. Was it at the beginning of the year?
It must have been over the summer, I think. Definitely it's been a few months.
Yeah, it has. And with the last like 18 months, I don't know about you, but I've completely lost track of time
Me too.
anyway.
Sometimes people are like, oh yeah, remember when we did that a couple weeks ago? And I'm like, wasn't that like 8 months ago?
Yeah. And likewise, it goes the other way, like something that happened in 2020. It's like it doesn't feel that long ago.
Yeah, my whole
It,
sense of time is just warped.
yeah, it's crazy. And obviously, there is so much that we can talk about because you have done so much in that time and you've brought out your book now, which later on I would love to know more about and to, yeah, find out where we can get a copy of it.
Yeah.
But for those that are listening that don't know anything about you, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kim Carducci. I am a former Division One swimmer turned mental health advocate and now officially a published author as of this week.
Yay.
Yeah. So I basically started my organization, Everything Athletes, just to provide more content on mental health. There's not enough resources out there about the topic. So I struggled with certain things in my career as a swimmer. I struggled with certain things, even being a non athlete in my adult life that stemmed from being an athlete. So I took the last year, I quit my corporate job, I did a whole bunch of research. I read the scientific journals. I watched professional athletes compete. I read every article I could. I've been reading athlete memoirs. I just submersed myself into what it means to be an athlete and wrote my book, which is called The Eye of the Tiger. But
Mhm.
I as an identity, not I as an eyeball. People sometimes get it confused. Um, and yeah, it's been a fun process writing that. It's been a long process, but it's helped me in so many ways. It's therapeutic to write anyway. So it was really interesting and insightful to dig into this topic and uncover just a lot of research and things that are helpful if you're struggling, being an athlete and being such a critical perfectionist like I was. So that's what I do now. I also have my podcast that you've been on, but podcast, book, online course, blog, and then you can follow me on social too. It's everythingathletes.com.
Brilliant. And I think we really get an idea about your mission and kind of what you're all about. So I'd love to really rewind and see like where did this come from in terms of when you were a swimmer? What did you find? So you sort of touched upon like struggles or challenges. What specifically were they around mental health?
Yeah, the biggest for me was entering retirement after I had only been a swimmer and I didn't know who I was, what to do, how to eat properly, right? I had always been on a strict regimen for everything in my life. And then once I retired after my freshman year in college. So you would think, okay, a 19-year-old at a great university, now that has no practice to go to, all the freedom in the world, like how amazing. That must be so liberating and awesome. But it was the total opposite. I struggled how to make friends. Like all my friends had been given to me by my environment through teammates. So I struggled how to make friends. I struggled just figuring out what was important to me. I didn't have practice to go to. I didn't have a coach breathing down my back. All of these restrictions and structures in my life had been lifted and I just didn't know what to do. It was a total identity crisis. And unfortunately, being in college, I was abusing alcohol and partying all the time. And that exacerbated those feelings of depression. And yeah, it got so bad, I checked myself into the university hospital for suicidal thoughts because I was so close to, I mean, everything that happened in my life, my stress reliever was, okay, well, if it gets bad enough, I'll just, commit suicide. Like that was the way I relieved stress. And I was just tired of living that way. I knew it wasn't right. I knew the feelings I had weren't normal. And so I sought help. And that was really an experience that kind of opened my eyes to, okay, a lot of athletes are going through this too. This is what I struggled with. And that experience inspired me to do some of the things I'm doing today.
Wow. And like you said, you were definitely not alone. The conversations that I've had from friends who are ex-professional athletes, it's the same, especially around nutrition. That seems to
Mhm.
be a big one, is kind of not knowing, you're not training as much as you used to. And so you don't need to be eating as much as you were or following that set nutrition plan. But when you leave that environment, there's not much support to actually
Mhm.
continue. And then it's the stuff around mental health and well-being as well, things that anyone else might take for granted. But when you're in this environment, it's so different to being out there in the real world, if it's okay to sort of call it that. So what
Yeah.
did you find helped you, through those dark times, through the times when you were struggling with all these thoughts and identity?
Yeah, well, personally, I think I ended up distracting myself enough with adult responsibilities. After I graduated, I got out of that college environment, which was harmful to me, and I was doing better. I got a job. I was going and doing social activities with friends. I was in relationships. Like all of these things kind of helped at the surface level, helped me move on, helped me distract myself. But I really underneath the surface was still unhappy. I was still like unsatisfied with like me and my life. And it really was only until the past year plus in doing this work that I'm doing now that I have learned so much like personal growth and self-help and all these, different genres of things I've been reading, that I've really adopted perspectives that have shifted the way I live and approach my whole life. Like, things like and it's so simple too. Things like always doing your best. Like no matter what happens, good, bad, ugly, anything, if you give your best effort, you can't refute how things turn out. Like you did your best, whatever else happens is out of your control. Like just a simple mindset like that. And that comes from a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, that big personal growth book. Another one from that book is Don't Take Things Personally. And I kind of call this one iceberg thinking. So, and this really helps. This is like, I wouldn't say it's cured my anxiety, but it has severely minimized my anxiety. So, like an iceberg, 10% of the iceberg is on top of the surface, 90% of the iceberg is below the surface. So, I view it as things that happen in my life or conversations I have, like the events that simply happen that you can observe is what's on top of the iceberg. And historically, when I've had anxious thinking, my thoughts go down below the surface and I'm stuck in that 90% of, okay, do they like me? Do they not like me? Am I saying something offensive? Why did this happen? Why did she do this? Why did he do that? Why did my coach do this? Like I just drown myself and create so much anxiety for me when I don't have evidence for those thoughts. I'm like stuck underneath the water. So what I try to do is just like I don't take things personally. I stay on top of the surface and I just take events at face value. And I really like give myself some tough love and say, okay, do I have evidence for this thought I'm thinking, or am I just like going to the worst case scenario out of self-protection? Like, what do I actually have to verify that the thought I'm thinking has some merit? And that's helped too, because I give myself the tough love and I say, okay, Kim, stop going through this BS in your head. You don't need to. And that's really helped for me.
Wow. And like you said, that sounds like such a simple thing, but a really powerful and effective tool. So
Yeah.
do you think that, yeah, like a lot of athletes, do you think because of this kind of perfectionist type mentality, do a lot of athletes live with anxiety from what you've read, from your own experience?
Hmm. I I don't know if I would say a lot. I think a lot of elite athletes struggle with bouts of anxiety or, bouts of depression just because of the emotional intensity of competing. Um, and plus, there's like different types of anxiety too. You can have generalized anxiety where you're just an anxious person, and that could be anyone. Like you could be a non-athlete and have that. And then there's, social anxiety, there's performance anxiety, there's, I guess, different subsets of anxiety. I don't know. That's a good question. I'll have to look at the statistics on that or see what the actual, and that's another thing too about mental health. Like the data and research there's just not enough out there, and it historically has not been looked at. And so the statistics on some of these things, they're either not accurate because like the researchers haven't had a reference group to compare the numbers to, or they just haven't looked at, okay, like what is the prevalence of anxiety in college athletes, you know? Um, so I don't know. I think it just depends on the individual. I know that's not a helpful answer, but
No, no, but it also shows what a complex area it is. You know, it's not necessarily a straightforward
yeah.
answer. As I asked it, I'm like, oh, that's a huge question because yeah, that it's not a straightforward answer. But from your own experience of so how long ago did you retire?
Almost 10 years, which is crazy. I retired after my
Wow.
freshman year, so it must have been 2012. Yeah, 2012, almost 10
Wow.
years.
So when you were competing, was there support around mental health? Were there conversations around mental health?
Nope, not not ever that I experienced. If anyone was having a hard time, it was just the coach that was there, but and not to knock, I've had great coaches, not to knock on my coaches, like, I've had awesomely supportive coaches, but at the same time too, there are, coaches that are coaching club teams or college teams, they're not trained in psychology, they're not trained on mental health, they're not therapists, they're not counselors, like, they're there to help you jump higher over the hurdle, or they're there to help you perfect your dive or whatever it is. So coaches, some of them are just naturally empathetic human beings and some of them are absolutely not. So yeah, I didn't have like a dedicated sports psychologist when I was competing. I know in college there was just the general psychology wing, I guess, of the research center where you could go, but that was for all students, so it was like backed up, it was hard to get an appointment. So yeah.
Mhm. And then your experience, now you're in like another aspect of this field and your conversations you've had, the research you've done. Does it seem like things are shifting? Are there more like interdisciplinary approaches so there is more support around mental health, or is it still not quite there yet?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been like looking at different athletic departments at universities because with my book coming out, it'd be nice to maybe do like a little book tour, go and speak
Yeah.
to some of these student athletes. So I've been like trying to get their contact info and going through these lists. And it seems like most teams now at least have some sort of sports psychologist on board. Not all of them, which there's still work to be done for that. But it seems like there's either someone dedicated to sports psychology or they have someone for player development. So that I think is a step in the right direction. But I mean, yeah, there's still teams out there. That's just student athletes in the US. I don't know what it looks like across the world, but um, and also too, I know I'm in like this sphere of this topic because it's what I study. So on social media and other platforms, it really looks supportive and it looks like there's great communities out there, which is helpful. But I guess it's also having athletes and coaches and parents and teams be aware of those resources that are out there.
And have you got any ideas around kind of how people can find out more, or how there could be more support around the education side?
Yeah, I mean, I almost think there should be like, FINA, like the organization FINA.
No.
So FINA, I don't even like know technically what they do, but I know for swimming, they're like the global organization that ensures like that everything's fair when you're competing. So in swimming, for example, at the Olympics, you have to have a FINA approved swimsuit to like actually compete. Like you can't just show up with like a swimsuit you got at like the store down the street. Like you have to have there's like a FINA sticker that goes on the suit so that they can verify, okay, you're not cheating. It's a FINA approved suit, all that stuff. And I think that's great what they do. Like if there was a FINA equivalent for mental health, like an established organization that everyone knew by the sticker, okay, that's where I go if I'm having trouble with depressive thoughts or anything like that.
Mhm.
But I don't know how, if there's someone that listens to this podcast that has a means to make that happen, I think that could be a helpful way for athletes to have that awareness.
Yeah, it would be incredible. And to get support, because, there are lots and lots of different therapists out there, but to have a therapist who understands where you're coming from the
Mhm.
sports world, because it's so very different to being in other contexts. And especially like you're saying around kind of retirement and, what happens when you come out of that, because when people retire in sports, it's very different to retiring in the corporate world. Generally you're going to be a lot younger. And so then you're
Yeah.
coming out and almost like redefining yourself again.
Yeah, and I like on that point too, Chris Bosch or not Chris Bosch, I just read Chris Bosch's book. Kobe Bryant came out with his, I don't know if you've seen it, his animated short film in 2015. It's called Dear Basketball, but sorry, but it's basically like a poem in video form where he just talks about like, oh, like dear basketball. It was when he was retiring. Like dear
Mm.
basketball, I have so many memories with you from when I was just a kid, playing hoops with my sock in my bedroom. And like he has this whole love poem about basketball. And I was thinking like there's not another career path where you would have that love for the thing that you do. Like, would a lawyer write, oh, law or like the Constitution or whatever? Like, I so appreciate and love you. Or like, would a surgeon be like, oh, surgery, I love you so much. Thank you for what you've done for me. Like, I don't think there's that same type of love there for other careers.
No, and this is a tricky one, but whether it's that same identity as well is,
Mhm.
this when you're a professional athlete, it's not a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday job. You're Even if you're not training, your thoughts are still there. You
Yeah.
live and breathe that until you retire. And your family, if you have family and friends and your wider network, they live and breathe that too. They're brought into that space a lot more than a corporate job.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily a job, is it? And it's a real love and passion, because especially, even when you are professional, the wages aren't amazing. It might seem on the face of it that it's like an incredible lifestyle, but you've really got to love and be passionate about what you do, because it's less about the money unless
Yeah,
you're like the top of the top.
absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I'll have to check that out. And then in terms of that kind of wider conversation, so you're saying, if you look on Instagram and social media, it looks like there's more kind of, yeah, people are opening up and talking more. From your own research for your book, have more professional athletes, whether they're still professional at the moment or ex, are they opening up more about mental health and what it was like for them or is like for them as a professional athlete?
Yeah, I would say they are. So Michael Robinson, he's a former NFL player. He he wasn't a producer, but he helped in creating the NFL's mental health and wellness video series. They did a whole video series earlier this year where they talked about mental health, ways to improve your mental well-being. And it was great. It was great content. And so Michael Robinson, he was one of the hosts for it, and he was a player, and I think he retired either 2006 or 2007 or played, probably 15 years ago. And he said like in that series, back then in 2006, which is not even that long, he's like you wouldn't have players coming forward and raising their hand and sharing these stories. Like that just didn't happen. NFL players didn't do that. But now you're seeing NFL players come forward and say, "Hey, I'm raising my hand. I have a struggle with this. This is what I'm going through." And just to hear him notice that shift as well, where players now today, I mean, just off of the top of my head, Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, Hayden Hurst, Drew Robinson, Kevin Love, Michael Phelps. Like there are so many athletes now that are opening up about just the emotional intensity of being who they are and competing.
Yeah, which is, and that is going to inspire other people. If you're seeing like the people that you look up to, if you're seeing them open up
Mhm.
and say, these are what I've been living with, and especially the emotional side, because you talk so much about the like, not you, like the wider world, I mean, like talk so much about the physical side of training and, being the best of the best, but actually you need to
Yeah.
have that mental stability in order to be the best. You can't have one without the other. And so by having those people talking about this and opening up, that's just going to inspire the next generation to realize that's okay. It's like it's welcomed to talk about this and acknowledge, yeah, when there are challenges and successes along the way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully the next generation will be much better off.
Yeah, definitely. And so your book is it leads really nicely onto your book is one of the things that is going to help, and it definitely is. And so when did it come out? Was it this week?
Yes, it came out on Tuesday, September 21st.
Amazing. Wow. And so would you like to just kind of explain a bit more about, yeah, what's the book about? Who's it aimed at? What can we expect to get from it?
Yeah, so it's called The Eye of the Tiger. It's aimed at athletes themselves. I do think coaches could benefit. I think parents could benefit. I think sports psychologists could benefit. But if I had an ideal reader, it would be the individual athlete. It's for the athlete. But the book, it's broken out into two halves. So the first half of the book, I contextualize mental health. I talk about thoughts and feelings and emotions and the power of the mind, and offer statistics on what mental health looks like today. You know, the fact that only 10% of student athletes with a mental health condition actually seek help. So that's a very low statistic.
Wow.
And then I also talk about the psychology behind building an athlete identity. So, all of the characteristics and behaviors that comprise being an athlete, like irrational motivation, right? It's not normal to subject your body to physical pain just to win like a race. Like, that's not normal. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like the blind belief against all odds, always having your self-worth validated by your external accomplishments. I kind of run through the list of what makes up an athlete. And then in the second half of the book, I talk about defeat, injury, and retirement. So I look at why those moments, because to me, I think those are the toughest moments that an athlete goes through. So I look at why those are so tough, and then I offer coping skills on how to actually navigate through them. So it's kind of a whole wide analysis of mental health with some practical guidance.
Yeah, which is so needed because from my limited reading around this subject so far, because there's so much that you can read around,
Yeah.
it's all focused on the physical side, and the only thing
Mhm.
around the mental side is like how to be a winner. They don't talk so much about, well, what happens when you lose? Because, you know, it's
Yeah.
inevitable that you aren't going to win all of the time and you are going to retire at some point. That's inevitable. So it's so very much needed to have that knowledge in terms of the wider research that's out there, the conversations, but then the practical stuff. When
Yeah.
actually, you know, this happens to you, this is what you can do. And presumably the practical elements, are they based just on things that you found have helped for you, or is this based on like learning from other people and conversations? I guess what I want to know is what did the research look like to make this book and find all those practical tips?
Yeah, I think I just looked at a number of articles. I even like have been digging into the scientific journals. Even advice like Ali Raisman had an interview on CBS where she did her talk about World Wellness Break Day. So like any practical advice she had in there, I just kind of like aggregated a whole bunch of things of like what would actually be helpful and chronological to walk through this tough period, and then just kind of laid them out. Some of it's personal experience, um, some of it's actual research, some of it's from other self-help books that I've read or from other athletes themselves. Some of it's actually from social media too. If someone's posted something that's really helpful, I'm like, wow, you know, that's actually a really good advice tidbit. You know, I include that. And of course, I cite and source and reference everything in my book too. I have endnotes after every chapter. Um, so yeah, I just like exposed myself to a whole bunch of stuff and then boiled it into this book.
Wow. So just like that sponge. I'm constantly saying I'm like a sponge and just like absorbing that, yeah, just taking in,
Yes.
being immersed in that
And you
field.
are
That's
referenced in the book
incredible.
too. Hashtag I am,
Ooh.
or not hashtag, at I am Rosie Mead. When I talk about
Yeah.
music, I said, if you want to dive deeper into this topic, talk to an expert like Rosie Mead.
Cool. Thank you very much. So the most important bit, where can people access your book? Where can they get it?
Yes, it's on Amazon. So that's the best place to get it. It's available not nationwide and globally. So depending on where you're located, you can access, if you just search the Eye of the Tiger, it should come up.
Brilliant. And to remind people, that's the letter I of the
Yeah.
tiger. And yeah, I ordered my copy today, so it definitely is. You
Oh,
can,
thank
yeah,
you.
it posts. So I think it said it's coming in not very long, actually, like 12 days time. So
Okay.
yeah, 6th of October.
Awesome.
So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll let you
Yeah.
know when I've read it, because I've been so like waiting, because obviously we've been having conversations and I knew that the book was in the pipeline, and so it's just amazing to see it now out in the world.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank you for
getting
the
lots of
support.
reviews. No, that's great. And seeing on social media, I can't remember who you said, and I can't remember the athlete's name, but someone, I think you'd asked him to read the book or review it, and then he put out social media posts about the book.
Yeah. It was probably Dr. Marcus Rogan. He's an Austrian Olympian. He was a swimmer
Oh,
and he went to 4 Olympics. And I it was so interesting how I connected with him too. I read this article about identity and how athletes struggle to move on, and he had a great excerpt in there about his thoughts, and he's a psychotherapist now, so he knows what he's talking about. I think he lives in Los Angeles now, but I was like, wow, this excerpt is actually like spot on. This is exactly what I'm trying to say. So I took his excerpt, put that part in my book, and then I reached out to him and said, like, hey, I have this book coming out. This was before anything was published. I was like, hey, I have this book coming out. I love what you wrote about in this article. Like, I'm including it in my book. I'd love for you to read the manuscript and like let me know what you think. And if you like it, if you don't mind offering a review that I can use on the back cover. And so he like read the whole thing. And honestly, I was just expecting him to like send back an email of like, oh yeah, you did a good job or whatever. Here's, 1 to 2 sentence review, like good luck. He ended up creating like 4 or 5 separate images for Instagram, took a picture with the printed out manuscript of him like sitting in a chair with the book, and
ah.
like put quotes from the book like as text over the images. Like he really went above and beyond, and I was so surprisingly shocked. I was like, wow, he really took the time to do all that and offered me a great review as well. So that was a cool moment. But yeah, that was him. I sent
Yeah.
the book to him, a paperback copy last week. But yeah, Dr. Marcus Rogan, if any of you are interested in psychotherapy.
Yes, we can check him out. Absolutely amazing. And that'll be the first of many, I'm really sure. So to wrap it up, obviously you're one of the first episodes on here, which is amazing. So the point of the podcast is around how athletes can have more alignment in lifestyle and training, which is exactly why I wanted to have you on as a first guest, because the moment I created this concept, I was like, right, this is definitely where Kim can come on and provide her expertise. But what I'd love to know is for you, kind of what alignment. So I don't generally like the term balance, because sometimes that's like an unachievable, especially as an athlete. You're not going to have perfect balance. You're going to be more focused on one thing maybe than the other. But for you, what does alignment look like? So right now, what does alignment look like in terms of your, everything that you've got going on, and how do you achieve alignment?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm actually going to pull up a document because I've been working on the definition of what is actually good mental health. Like, what
Mm,
do I do in my life? I guess to how you're phrasing it, how I would live a life with alignment.
mm,
Okay, so some of the things that I do, I eliminate, not totally, but I eliminate alcohol and caffeine.
yeah.
They're psychoactive substances to begin with. I'm drinking decaf coffee. I drink decaf coffee every morning.
Mhm.
And if I do drink alcohol, it's maybe once a week. And I try to limit myself to 2 drinks, 3 drinks max if I'm somewhere for like a long time.
Yeah.
But that's honestly like before getting into any thoughts or feelings or anything, just like the stuff I'm putting in my body, in my gut that affects everything else. Like that has been the biggest game changer that I've noticed. I Last summer I went 10 weeks without a single drop of alcohol, And this is like coming from someone who I'm Irish Italian, so I'm going to blame that. Like, I like to drink, I like to have coffee, I like to drink alcohol, I love red wine, like I love doing all these things, and I overdid it. I would consistently overdo it. And I went 10 weeks without a single drop of alcohol. And honestly, like, I can't explain to you how much I noticed my mood change. Like, I would wake up in the morning and I would be like confident and excited about my day. And I would be like, oh, this is what I have to do at work today. Okay, I can manage all that and I'll finish it up. And then, like, everything's good. Like, I can do it. Like, my whole mood shifted. My skin was better. I was less bloated. I was getting great sleep. My productivity shot through the roof. Like, I started writing this book when I did that.
Wow. I found
So
exactly the same. When I started doing strength training, my PT also gives me a nutrition plan, and I'm half Irish and I would drink a lot of Guinness.
yeah.
It was almost what I was known for, which is a bit bad. People would know that that's what I like to drink. But I found when I had this nutrition plan, I'm drinking so much more water than I ever have. Like, I'm having like 3 liters a day. And I'll normally have like a soda stream, so it's like sparkling water,
Oh,
and I'll put
yeah.
ice and lemon in it, so it tastes really nice. And I haven't fancied it, and friends have been really surprised. And the first question is always, "Are you pregnant?" And no, I just don't fancy it. I actually am quite happy with sparkling water, and the more
Huh.
water I drink, I find the less that I snack. So then I'm not bloated. I sleep so much better, and my mood is so much better. It's just from such a simple thing as drinking more water, and your skin's
Yeah.
good because you're hydrated.
Yeah.
It's
I guess, like,
amazing.
too, and maybe even a step back from that is just having self-awareness. Like, nothing that I say here could be the blanket statement that's going to help every single person. I guess having the self-awareness of how you're living and behaving and feeling, and really tuning into that so that you can make those adjustments to live super aligned. So, I mean, even for me, it sounds silly, but I've actually been creating a list of things that make me feel good or make me happy or bring me joy. Like,
Yeah.
I think at the top of my list, one of my favorite things to do, if I don't have a hot tub, but I would love to have a hot tub, but if I'm on vacation somewhere, like, in the morning, going to an outdoor hot tub when it's like a little crisp and cold outside, and just like sitting in a hot tub, like outside in the morning. Like, that is
Yeah.
one of my favorite things. Um,
Amazing.
Listening to this one you'll appreciate, listening to songs with deep bass. Like, I
Yeah.
love deep bass songs.
Yeah, it's because you
Um,
feel it. Like, it's that primitive. I think we spoke about in the episode I was
yeah,
on. It's that primitive thing. You feel the music.
yeah. And then, like,
Amazing.
another one I have is, doing a super hard workout. Like, if I don't run, I don't really like to run. I play a lot of tennis, but if I go and do like a really hard yoga classes, some of the yoga classes I do are not like yoga. They're like actually really hard, like circuit classes. But if I go do a hard workout, come home, take a hot shower, uh, like feel all clean, brush my hair, put on some comfy clothes, and then just like lay on the couch and just watch some Netflix. Like, I love that feeling of like doing the hard work and then giving my body rest. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
which
just
is
like
so
create
important.
yeah, I just have like behaviors that I know access those aligned, satisfied feelings, and I try and do them whenever I can. So, yeah, just having, I guess, just growing self awareness so you can ebb and flow with life and make sure that you're making decisions that are true to who you are.
Yeah, that's so true. And like you said, it's not a one size fits all. It's really about knowing ourselves and knowing what's going to resonate with us, what's going to help us feel in alignment. And then around mindset, is there anything in particular that you do for your own mental health, for your mindset to kind of help that feel in alignment?
Yeah, I don't take things personally, or I try not to. So that's a good one. Always do my best. That's another one. Um, Let me see what else I have in here. I guess with just being a human being, and it just kind of ties into the primitive thing of music, but I try and go out in nature, whether it's by a creek or just a walk in my neighborhood, because I don't do that enough. And I don't think a lot of people do that enough. We have all these devices and all this technical stuff in our world, and screens and metal and everything. I don't think people connect to the earth in the ways that they should. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's proven that it helps your mental health to just like be in the, be in the nature, be in trees and stuff.
Yeah, can help with sleep, getting that natural light rather than just being in front of a blue screen. With so many of us working from home as well, a lot of,
Yeah,
we've got dogs, so we go out for walks with them. But it's way too easy, especially coming into winter. It's too easy to just kind of stay in all the time, and you're
yeah,
just taking in blue screen. Whereas if you get out into nature, you're taking in natural light. That's then helping your circadian rhythm, so you can then sleep better. And
absolutely.
going for a walk like barefoot, apparently that's really good. Like
Yeah,
first thing, I haven't done it yet, but first thing in the morning to like go for a walk around your garden barefoot and just have that like connection with the earth.
yeah, it really helps. And then the last one I'll say is just having self-compassion for being a human being. And
Yeah.
that's something I think I'll still have to work on for a little bit because especially for athletes, right? Like you're trained and conditioned that errors are like the worst thing in the world. Like don't make
Yeah.
mistakes, don't make errors. Everything has to be perfect. Do the best all you can all the time. And so you become very critical of yourself. And I think, learning how to love myself, the good and the bad, I think that's been a helpful process to not expect a robot perfectionist. Like I expect myself to be a human. So when I inevitably do the mistakes that are of the species I'm born into, I can't fight the fact that I'm a human being. So when I forget to do something that my friend asked me to do, or if I'm late on a deadline or whatever it happens to be, I don't beat myself up for it the ways that I used to. I just like pause and I slow down and I say, okay, I'm just a human being like everyone else. I'm doing the best I can, but yeah, I expect myself to not be a robot. I expect myself to be a human being. And just learning how to be kind to myself in those moments that I need it the most.
Yeah. Oh, that's just perfect to kind of wrap it up on, because I think that's, takeaways for everyone. I'm expecting that most people listening will be athletes or coaches or involved in that life. But
Yeah.
actually, for anyone listening, just reminding yourself that you are human and having some self-compassion. That's, yeah, so, so important.
Yeah. I actually like to
Brilliant.
even take it one step further. Like if I forget to do something or make a mistake or whatever quote unquote negative experience you would say, I actually pause and think, okay, well, actually, how was this good for me? Like how can this moment, looking back now, how can this actually be a great thing that happened to me? Sure, it's not great that I, missed a deadline or whatever, but maybe it was actually good because now like these three other things are available. I kind of play a little mind game like that to make it a positive experience.
Yeah, no, definitely. I always believe that things happen for a reason. And there's a brilliant
Mhm.
Nelson Mandela quote, which is so I'm going to paraphrase it because I won't get it exactly right, but it's around, you never lose, you either win or you learn. And I love
Oh, I
that
love
because
that.
it's so good, isn't it? Because then, there you can always learn. And even if you win, you're learning from that. It doesn't just
Yeah.
mean that, yeah, like you've just like achieved what you wanted and that's that. You can learn from what you've just done and do it again. But likewise, if you don't win, you
Yeah.
haven't lost. You've just learned something.
I love that.
It's such a good quote. Brilliant. So we know how to get your book now. If anyone would like to follow you on social media or find your website, how can they find you?
On Instagram, it's at everythingathletes.com. And then I'm also on Twitter as that athlete girl, GURL.
Brilliant. And what's your website?
It's everythingathletes.com.
Perfect.
Super
Lovely.
easy.
It's super easy to remember. It's been so good to have you on, Kim, and
Thank you,
amazing to see that your
Rosie.
book's come out as well. So wishing you like huge success with it.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you ordering a coffee and I appreciate the support.
Yeah, I'll let you know when it comes. I can't wait to read it. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.